If you're an Android user and you're looking for a new app for your podcast, check out the Podcast Republic app on the Google Play Store. There are thousands of good reviews, so you don't have to trust me on this. Take it from the general public. Podcast Republic app is a great way to listen to podcasts on your Android devices. That's the Podcast Republic app on the Google Play Store. I think it would be remiss not to acknowledge the situation happening in the world on the day we're recording this. Black Lives Matter. It's important to say that. It's important for white folks to say that, and I think the second thing to do for white folks is get out of the way and let people whose voices should be heard on this topic be heard. So
stand with them, not for them.
Do my best to amplify stuff that I've seen on our social media platforms to help that. I don't think that I or Andrew is qualified to speak at length about this topic, but I think a murder happened, and it's crazy not to acknowledge that happened, and hopefully we can get some actual resolution toward the systemic problems of police violence in this country that are heavily targeted toward minorities. It seems a little heavy for this show, but you can't really talk about this movie without talking about the social message, and I feel the social message of They Live ties very much into what's going on in the world right now, so that's why we're talking about it. We're going to talk about the movie now, but I just felt like we should say something. Welcome to Dissecting the 80s. I am Tripp Lano, one half of the Mega Podcasting Powers, and with me, as always, is a man who is here to chew bubblegum and talk a long time about John Carpenter's They Live, the Macho Man Drew.
Andrew Lano, and I'm all out of bubblegum.
This is our second listener request month pick. It comes from one of our Patreon supporters, Tom, who is the second member of the New Coke Ad-Execs or Lopper Club. I think depending on your New Coke Ad-Execs got a little bit of love for Michelle, so
I think it's fun.
I don't disagree with it, but anyway, thank you to Tom for recommending this. This is one of my favorite John Carpenter movies. It's really fun to sometimes talk about movies we love, so let's hear it from Tom.
Hey, Tripp and Andrew. This is Tom from Patreon. It's really nice to speak to you guys. I'm very excited you picked They Live. I think it's a film that's it's loads of fun and it's very smart. So let me first get out of the way and mention the obvious awesome things about this movie. It's insanely quotable. It has an amazing twist. And it has arguably the finest fight scene ever committed to film. But more than that, the movie's pretty important, I think, and very culturally relevant. So in the mid part of the 80s, you had films like Ghostbusters, Back to the Future, Rocky IV, Red Dawn, Top Gun, Rambo 2, films that were basically like feel-good cinema, aggressively pro-America, or played on Cold War invasion paranoia. But by the late 80s, there was this wave of films that were pretty subversive, that acknowledged it and really challenged the impact of Reaganism and responded to the culture wars that were ramping up at the time. Things like Platoon, Wall Street, RoboCop, Last Temptation of Christ, and I think They Live really fits in this group. So keeping all of that in mind, I want to make a point about Roddy Piper. I think Carpenter's casting of Roddy Piper is among the most brilliant casting decisions he could have possibly made. So Piper was a guy who was a big part of the 80s cultural tapestry. And he was really, if you remember, the main adversary to Hulk Hogan, who was basically a Reagan-era superhero. Piper never beat Hogan cleanly in the 80s. He was a guy who was the constant antagonist of a real American, but he could never really be allowed to win against the real American. So immediately you have a built-in understanding of his character as a metaphor for the previously ambitious but now marginalized person that he's playing in the film. I think that's amazing. It's inspired. It's awesome. Finally, the last point I'd like to make about this film is that I think little has really happened in the last 32 years that changes the central message of this film. And while it's fun and interesting science fiction film that I think you guys are going to have a blast breaking down, I think the social cynicism that it has is still really honest and truthful. So anyway, I'm looking forward to hearing your thoughts on this one, and I'll talk to you guys again next year. Thanks a lot. Bye.
Well, like he said, we've watched They Live, so you know what that means.
We gotta go back. We gotta go dissect the 80s. It's your metaphor for Reaganomics. Something's gotta be about your metaphor for Reaganomics.
When the mega powers explode.
I'm talking about the 80s. Oh, yeah.
Great Scott.
Cream of the crop. Oh, yeah.
Mega powers, yeah.
When this baby hits 88 miles per hour, you're gonna see some serious shit.
So I don't often do this because, well, it's not usually a thing I can talk about, but I have actually seen this movie in a theater and it was a cool experience. So
Really?
Yeah. So when this is about 5 years ago now, 4 or 5 years ago, I took a solo trip to New Orleans. I'd never traveled solo before. And so I made a whole big list of all these things I wanted to do. And it was cool. I don't have to like bounce them off anybody else and all that. And, there's a small theater there that I could not find. I hope they're still around, but I couldn't find it earlier when I was looking. But it was a little independent theater that did a lot of retro screenings and stuff like that. At the time I was there, they were in the middle of like a John Carpenter run, and I happened to be there for They Live, which at the time I'd never seen before. So I was like, well, I got to
What time of year was it?
Fall, September-ish.
Okay.
Oh, you know what? I think I just found it. I think it's called the Prytania. I'm almost positive this is it, looking at the photos. This is it. Prytania. Old school single screen theater. I don't think it was a midnight show. It was probably like a 10 o'clocker because I'm a little old for midnight shows, frankly. I can go to a concert late.
I don't think they do midnight. I mean, other than like Rocky Horror type stuff, I don't think midnight shows are a thing anymore. Now it's just Thursdays at 7 p.m.
Yes, but there are still theaters that'll do, like, if you have an independent theater, which I'm sure there are some in the city, they will have midnight movies for the, like, cult vibe of it, I would imagine. That's true. There's one that we talked about, like, trying to talk them into letting us do a live commentary a long time ago that I don't know if it's still around, but they definitely did that kind of stuff. But anyway, it was this cool old theater, not, like, old in the ritzy movie house way, it was old, but, like, lived in old, the kind of movie you'd want to see they live in. And I don't often buy, I'm not a treats at the movies guy. Like, I can go 2 hours without consuming any food. So I just, like, occasionally I've gotten to where I hardly even sneak stuff anymore. Like, I bring my water bottle usually, but I don't feel guilty about that. It's not a judgment on anyone who does.
I can say I like a candy at the movies.
But I was on vacation, so it's like I got the whole deal. I got the popcorn, I got the soda, I got the candy, and it was this like whole big spread. And then I got to sit down and watch They Live for the first time, and with a bunch of other enthusiastic John Carpenter people. No laughing at the movie, none of that stuff. And it was a hoot. Like, I was surprised how much I liked the movie, given that it stars a wrestler instead of an actor in the lead, and is. Borderline cheesy in a lot of its moments, but I like this movie a lot, and I think it's not necessarily as good as it should be, but it's still a fun watch. So it's nice to watch. I honestly had a lot of fun watching Grease 2 and talking about it, and this is not to throw shade at Michelle, but it's nice to get a movie that I genuinely really like. And I think that's why this is maybe a little early to announce this, but I think the new plan for February going forward that we kind of joked about before is going to be favorites-buary. So Andrew will pick a favorite, I'll pick a favorite. Yeah. But we'll each pick a favorite movie, and I think it'll be interesting and fun to get that nice palate cleanser of talking about stuff you really like. Although, we'll see. If you're listening and you're like, I would love to hear your feedback on whether you prefer episodes where we really like the movie or where we really hate the movie, like what you think the better energy is, because I truly don't know. Anyway, that's my story about seeing this in the theater, which is just, I don't know. I thought it was nice.
Sounds nice.
I haven't seen a lot of the movies we cover in a theater, so it was a real treat to go revisit this week. It's streaming on Stars right now, which you can get a free trial of.
Kind of. So Comcast dropped Stars, but picked up something else that's Stars adjacent. So if you have a Comcast like cable subscription, you can watch it for free on what's called Movieplex, I think.
That's the Comcast proprietary streaming thing.
Movieplex?
I thought so.
I didn't think so, but yeah.
Maybe that's StreamPix.
It's Stream. I think StreamPix is.
Well, whatever. It's out there to be found in all sorts of different ways. I'm sure you could track this movie down. But we start with Roddy Piper strolling through Los Angeles. Now, he was like so committed to this acting thing that he basically retired from wrestling to go do this. And the intent was that he wouldn't go back.
Not great.
No, he isn't. I think he has a lot of charisma.
He does. And there's potential there. But the problem is that, like, he's very clearly a professional wrestler who's trying to act.
Right.
And for me, the biggest issue with his performance is that there's not a lot of energy, but also like intent. Like there's scenes where you're like, oh, you should be like amped up and like running, and there should be a frenetic energy, and he's just like casually strolling around. He's very casual.
There's not a lot of subtext in what he does and says, which I think is the key to being a good actor, is when you're talking and performing, there's almost a second stream of information coming from your body language and the way you say things. And Roddy is like just barely holding on from going into full wrestler promo. And he was a shouty promo guy. He was from the 80s. Like he was
a Macho Man.
Yeah. So Macho Man would go like up and down. Right? Like it'd be like, the cream rises to the top. Yeah, the cream. And he literally would like pick up props off the table in catering and then use them. There's literally a great Macho Man promo.
I know.
Where he is holding a creamer. I'm just telling anyone who doesn't know. I know you know. I've showed it.
Well, I feel like you've seen. I feel like it's been on the show before.
I put the Clockwork Orange things on your eyes and was like, watch this. You got to watch it. But Piper was like the yelly type. It would like he'd get up to 11 and just stay there and just be like, I'm coming for you, kind of thing,
Okay.
So it feels like he kept doing that in the movie, and Carpenter had to keep being like, no, like 100% less than that.
Well, it's funny because Carpenter actively wanted him.
Right.
It wasn't
Carpenter,
like
I think, was a wrestling fan.
Well, it wasn't. I'm just saying it wasn't like the studio was like, hey, this will get butts in the seats. We'll put this professional famous wrestler in the movie.
Right. And he was a big guy, but he wasn't a number one guy. So it was a little surprise. He's not quite famous enough to be stunt casted, I feel.
Okay. And so it's obviously scored by John Carpenter, because I'm pretty sure he scores all his own movies. Is that right?
He is at least involved in all of them. I think there's a few, like this one has another person credited as well, and I think that happens a few times.
The score is interestingly very much noir.
Yeah.
Like it sounds like Roger Rabbit or like a jewel thief sneaking around.
It's got this like kind of driving plunky bass sound, and I like the music in this movie. But there are many scenes where I'm kind of like, like that's not the vibe I would have searched for the music.
Yeah.
But I mean broadly, I like Carpenter a lot.
The Halloween score can't be like there's some like the simplicity and brilliance of that score is great.
Yeah, and he was like a huge synth guy, and sort of he's in multiple synth documentaries because he's contributed so much to the rise of synth music, which I think is kind of a cool thing.
And isn't there a video of him with like Nintendo Switch Labo cardboard instruments?
I think so.
Trying to make the Halloween theme, and he's like getting frustrated.
Yeah. I don't know that I watched it, but I think I did see that highlight and was like, oh, that sounds cute, and just kept scrolling. He does now all he does is music. He doesn't really want to make films anymore. Him and his son, who's I rabbit holed on this while I was watching the movie because I've seen it so many times. His kid is a junior, but they call him Cody. So he has his own name. He just goes by Cody Carpenter, but his name is like John Jr., which I thought was funny.
Is Cody like his middle name?
No.
That's weird.
Yeah. It was like they're like, we're just going to call him Cody. And I was like, well, why didn't you just call him whatever? I'm not going to get involved. Yeah.
Because his son was involved in the music for New Halloween, right?
No, John. I mean, they both were. John was too.
Yeah, I was going to say, because I remember reading that because I loved the musical moment in that movie when Allison sees the shape for the first time and like runs through the street trying to get someone to help her with that like boing, like really heavy guitar. I heard that in the theater. I was like, I need this song in my life because it's so evocative. Yeah,
no, it's a great score. I mean, I think John Carpenter is probably a better film scorer than director, maybe, and that's a high compliment because I think he's a very.
I was going to say because his directing is great.
Yeah. So that was not a knock on his directing. I think he's a great director, but I think he's maybe even better as a film scorer. Anyway, we go. So Roddy strolls all the way throughout LA, and you get I got the vibe that this was all stolen shots. Did this feel fly by night to you in the good way?
Oh, like guerrilla style?
Yeah. Like they just grabbed a camera and were like, just walk through Los Angeles and we'll just shoot it. Yeah. I don't know that it was.
It looks like he rinses his hands in a puddle at one point.
It absolutely does look like he does that. Yes. Yeah.
Gross.
Yeah. LA puddle, probably 50% pee, just FYI.
And in the 80s, it's 50% pee, 50% cocaine.
Yeah, that's true. Well, maybe he was just trying to sift the cocaine out. There's like like the old miners with their sluice boxes. Yeah, he's panning for cocaine in the Los Angeles puddles. That's probably very lucrative.
I mean, yeah.
You'd have to like dry it like they dry
like salt
water.
Like he's a salt farmer, a coke farmer.
Yeah, there's another camp that's not in this movie. It's just like a bunch of like rocks, flat rocks with shallow bowls carved into them that they like collect the puddle water, put it in the bowl, let the sun dry it, and scrape the cocaine powder out of it.
I'm a cocaine farmer. You don't farm cocaine. You do in LA.
I'm imagining Keith David saying that.
I wish I could do a Keith David.
Yeah.
Dr. Facilier.
If I did it, people would be like, I think the thing you're doing is racist. And I'd be like, you're right. So I just don't do
that it is. Yeah, Keith David is Dr. Facilier from Princess and the Frog and Goliath from Gargoyles.
I was going to tell this story later, but I'll tell it now, and then we'll that way we'll have less derailing later, because we haven't really started the movie. So I used to work at this company in Columbia, Maryland. I don't work there anymore, but there was a documentary coming out about the founding of that company, and Columbia is a planned community, and it's kind of an interesting documentary if you're interested in municipal
I think you talked about this already.
Did I talk about this in the podcast?
The last time Keith David, because Keith David came up in the last couple months.
Okay, well then I will be quick about it. But anyway, Keith David narrated this documentary, and they had us in the room with the filmmaker to talk about the movie, and like it wasn't like a feedback in the true sense of it, right? Because like the movie was finished, it was just like a courtesy screening, and so everybody's like asking these very boring questions, and I was like, so what's the process of working with Keith David like? Like how'd you swing that? He's like a big name, like he's a huge name in voiceovers, and he's also Keith freaking David.
What I love is that Keith David is a voiceover actor who also has a film acting career, like. He does both. Right.
Well, when you got a voice like that, but no one else in the room, including I'm pretty sure the director of the documentary knew who Keith David was. And I had to be like, okay, well, never mind.
That would make me cry inside.
Yeah, no, I was like screaming.
I can't remember what Keith David movie was did on the podcast before.
We definitely have done a Keith David movie, but I thank you for telling me so I didn't go into long detail on a story I've told before. If you're curious, just keep going back through Keith David movies in the catalog. Eventually, you'll find.
Yeah, whatever we most recently did.
It's like a word search that I gave you. So anyway, we're at the unemployment office. I love this actress's performance playing the unemployment lady.
It's very Juno from Beetlejuice.
Yes, extremely. In fact, for a minute, I thought that was
the same. Yeah, it's not. Juno?
But, yeah, I didn't even look her up because eventually I was like, no, it's not. But it does. She's definitely channeling the same sort of energy. But it is exactly the tone of dealing with unemployment offices, and I can tell you that from personal experience in the past. It is exactly what it's like. She's just like rolling her eyes, like, yeah, I know you worked on that thing. Yeah. We have nothing for you. Go away.
There's a street preacher who is credited as such.
Yes. Well, I mean, that's his role.
What do you think is funny? Like, because in the credits, it says, like, and this performer's name as street preacher. No one else got a character name, but for some reason, this guy did.
Yeah, Roddy Piper is credited as Nada, and I genuinely don't remember anyone saying that name in the movie.
They don't.
Okay.
He doesn't have a name.
Okay. But he's credited as Nada.
Which is nothing.
I yes, I get that, but it's made me think, like, does somebody call him that? Because, like, I don't... Because there's even a scene... Keith David introduces himself as Frank, and I don't remember his response to that.
He doesn't give one.
Like, I think he says, "Nice to meet you, Frank," and that's it. Like, they just don't exchange names. I will say, if you're gonna... This movie does follow the very smart template that Terminator uses as well, which is if you're going to cast a non-actor, like you're casting someone just for their look. And look, Roddy Piper has the perfect look for this character. He looks like weathered. His hair is ridiculous in the best way. He's buff looking. He looks like a guy who
I can't figure out who else from the 80s I would think to put in that role. Like,
right.
Without completely changing the movie.
Right. And he only has, much like Arnold and Terminator, like 50 lines, maybe. Like Terminator, I think, might be 50 words. Honestly, it's very, very small performance, like word count wise. But Piper doesn't do a lot. Like most of his talking is wrestling promos. Like he's either making fun of somebody or does the the iconic bubblegum line or whatever.
Which was apparently, a lot of it. Apparently, the bubblegum line was one of his not used wrestling slogans.
So I think this is a Roddy Piper story. My brain is full of nonsense, so who knows? But I am fairly certain that I have heard him tell, he's since passed away, but that he used to just like have a notebook with him and he was just like constantly thinking up zingers and just constantly writing them down. And so when he came to the movie, it was like, I have this book full of these zingers. Can we? And I think that's how that got worked in. And there's another scene later that we'll get to where he just starts like shredding this guy. And it's definitely from his book of ideas, I think.
Yeah.
But anyway, the street preacher's there and he's a blind guy and he's proselytizing. And then these cops show up and Piper kind of like continues on his merry way. But this opening is really kind of sparse. It's other than the scene with the agent at the unemployment office, not much talking. Piper's just kind of walking and observing. But I really feel that it builds the world in a hugely pivotal way for this movie. You kind of understand exactly where we are, that it's sort of the near future, but a lot has changed from the world that you're familiar with.
Yeah, it feels almost like, it's kind of hard to describe, but it's like a revisionist history 80s, where like things are a little farther along.
It's like 2025, but also the 80s.
It's Tomorrowland.
Right.
It's the future envisioned by...
Yes, yeah. Like everything is still in a hugely 80s vibe, but it's also 30 years in the future or whatever. Although it doesn't ever tell you that, I don't think.
No, there is one line where a newscaster says, reports said by the year 2025, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
So we don't know if that means, 45 years. Yeah.
40-ish.
40-ish years in the future. Yeah. Or, next year.
Right. He tries to get a construction job, which is mostly so he can pop that shirt off.
Yeah, that sweet shirt. Shirtless pic. There's also so many cuts to fake commercial. Like they had to film a dozen fake commercials for this movie.
The two things I kept thinking about watching this is, one, you just said, fake commercials and the huge amount of time invested in making them. Two is the props. That grocery store that we'll talk about later has like 400 or 500 products in it that are all had to be made by hand.
I think that's why I respect this movie so much, is that like from a technical standpoint, they had to build two worlds. There's there's the real world, quote unquote, that's like the one we see, and then there's the black and white version of that where all of the labels are this like, hipster aesthetic nonsense.
Beer,
yeah. Like it literally just is like sustenance on a carton of eggs, and like it looks cool as hell. I would love to go to one of those. I know you're not a fan of these, but one of those like photo spot art installation pieces where they
would never do it because it'd be too much work. This like that's the amount of work that went into this.
I mean, no, they've done big stuff like that. Like there's one called I Love Scary Movies. And it's in LA. They kept saying it was going to be a tour, and I never saw it tour, and it pissed me off. But it was The Shining, Beetlejuice, Lost Boys, Friday the 13th, and Nightmare, I think, and then maybe It later. But it was like these giant, expensive, elaborate set pieces that you could just go and take photos all over. And I was like, how cool would this grocery store be?
Yeah, no, but I'm saying like you can make the sewer scene in It or whatever pretty easily at scale, but like they're not making 400 cans of soup that say sustenance. That's just so much work. It must have taken someone weeks to manufacture all these food labels for this one scene in this movie.
Yeah.
But we'll get there in time. Keith David is across the way at the construction site, and he's like kind of doing some machismo bullshit. He's like kind of flexing an arm and working his sledgehammer. But then he immediately offers to help, which I think is really interesting because it's two very different characterization pieces that kind of form this character.
Mm-hmm.
So Piper says he doesn't want to follow him, but then starts following him, and because Keith David offers him a place where he can get some food and a shower and stuff like that. So they get to this camp and they tour it, and it's a homeless encampment, but everybody kind of pitches in and makes it home for everyone, which is like a cool community thing.
And I never understood because I feel like it's a big thing in movies that there's like alleyway and yard TVs. Yeah, and I'm just like, how are we doing that? Like you're in the middle of a field.
Yeah, I mean it's old school antenna and it's running off a battery is what the answer is. I think.
Oh, it's a battery. Okay.
Yeah.
Because they're watching TV and then the broadcast gets interrupted by this like kind of befuddled professor type.
Yeah, he's got like gosh, there was a person in my head that he looks like and it popped right out. I'm sorry, but befuddled professor is a good
because he keeps looking at his notes. Like we see his eyes cast down a lot to like check his notes.
Yeah,
and he's it's the equivalent of the guy who wears tin foil on the subway platform that like rattling off. You're like, okay.
Right, and everybody ignores them and moves on their very way.
But he's on there. He's like breaking onto the TV broadcast.
Right, they're using like hacking techniques to try to broadcast this message.
They're hacking into the mainframe.
They are not hacking into the mainframe. They are hacking into the television signal.
But it's a thing that pops up and doesn't really get explained as much as I would like it to. That while they're all of a sudden there's a different broadcast and it's this befuddled professor. And while the new broadcast is happening, all of the people who are watching it complain about headaches.
Well, they talk about this with the sunglasses. And I think the idea is it's such intense new information for your brain to process that it physically hurts you.
That's fair. It would have been interesting to explore because if that's the case of like when he pops on the TV, you get a headache, they could have. I'm surprised that there wasn't like dialogue about spinning it like, oh, it's a terrorist organization and their broadcast hurts you. Like, don't listen to them.
I think the reason why maybe they don't is because the signal is interrupted very locally. It's only in Los Angeles and maybe even only in a certain part of Los Angeles. So it's more like, let's not acknowledge them at all. There's also a scene with Piper and Keith David after they get food. Also, I love like they're doling out this food and the woman puts peas on Piper's plate and he clearly doesn't move when he's supposed to. And she's like, would you like some more? And he's like, yeah, sure. And then she puts and there's like no room on the plate for this additional scoop of peas. And he's like kind of holding them onto the plate. Like,
and she like pats him on the back.
Like clearly a cue got missed there. And then Keith David's like trying to explain to him, like, oh, the people in power, he kind of tries to wake him up to the world and Piper's not quite ready. But while everyone's getting these headaches, he sees the preacher from before mouthing all the words like word for word with the speech. And he starts to realize something's up. So he starts trying to figure out what's going on.
Yeah. And that I remember because I've seen this movie before. It's been a very long time. I couldn't remember specifics, and so when the preacher was doing that, I was like, "Oh, wait a minute! I was trying to piece together myself, like, what,
oh, really?
What does this all mean?"
Right. Yeah, because it could be like an interesting mind control thing.
Yeah, exactly.
The other way, yeah, but it's not mind control. It's just the preacher probably wrote this speech. But
yeah, he's in on it.
Yeah, so Piper starts observing the church across the street, where he thinks something's going on and so there's like a guy who greets them when they come to camp who is sort of like Dollar Store Meatloaf like Dollar Store Meatloaf, the singer, not Dollar Store Meatloaf, the food. He looks like Meatloaf, who my girlfriend recently called Meatball and I laughed for an hour.
Meatball.
Yeah, she was like asking me to put a song on. She's like, that one you always put on by Meatball. And I was like, excuse me? What?
Meatball is a subversive drag queen, actually.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, she's pretty cool.
But so this meatloaf looking fella is the leader of a group of people in trying to, wake society up. And they have a secret lab hidden in the church where they're manufacturing these sunglasses that will be, pivotal in the movie pretty shortly.
I really like the design of the sunglasses because they're just weird enough. Like they could have very easily just gone to like, I don't know, Oriental Trading if that existed in 84 and bought like a lot of like not
Wayfair adjacent.
Yeah, purchased a lot of them. But instead they kind of like designed something that like looks a little futuristic but still is very like everyday wear.
Right.
Very pedestrian.
Right. They're pretty similar to a classic Ray-Ban Wayfarer, but they're just slightly futuristic.
Yeah, it's just like instead of dipping down and being segmented and separated between the two eyepieces, the top is sort of straight across.
So the preacher catches Piper and he feels his face, which is interesting to me that the preacher is, I guess because he is blind, has the sort of true sight that Piper gets from the glasses, that he can like feel a face and feel an alien, which I can't imagine, like must feel horrible to touch.
It'd be like touching Jason.
But Piper gets spooked. Yeah, I wouldn't want to do that. But Piper gets spooked by this helicopter, and then later that night, the helicopter comes back, and it's a raid on the church. The police roll in, and they just literally destroy this camp with a bulldozer.
Well, that's what
backhoe.
confused me, because I assumed they were going to come and destroy the church, but...
They do try to do that, too. They set it on fire.
But it seems like most of the attack is focused on the encampment.
I mean, it's just sort of a classic, get them out of here. Let's get rid of this encampment. It's encroaching on our nice looking area sort of thing. Like we got to clean this spot up.
Yeah.
More than anything is what it feels like to me.
Because I feel like that's what I was confused about. Like, I guess for me, I was trying to think like, how are they going to explain this in terms of like the people in power? Because if destroying an abandoned old church could be like, oh, it's condemned. It's not safe. We have to take it down.
Right. Yeah, I mean, they don't have to explain it at all. It's a homeless encampment, and nobody gives a shit about them.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the truth. That happens all over the country all the time. They wail on the church.
This is the scene that I said that I was alluding to earlier when I said Piper doesn't really have enough energy because everyone else is running around panicked and scared of the bulldozer that's destroying their home, and he is just slowly, casually, lackadaisically meandering. And I was like,
I think the intention is that he is like
stunned.
Calm, cool, and collected. No, I think it's supposed to be he's like cool under pressure, but I agree with you. I don't think it works.
I think if they want it to read cool under pressure, he has to be helping people.
Right.
Like he has
only
to
helps one guy.
Snap to and be like, hey, follow me, come this way, and like clear, like it needs to feel like he's cool and calm as opposed to him being like, whatever.
He doesn't even get his own stuff, which I thought was bonkers.
Yeah, because he has a pack.
And he says multiple times that he has his own set of tools and yada, 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 and he just lets all that go. But he does help one person escape who he's like sneaking by as they're just wailing on the preacher and the meatloaf guy.
Was it the meatloaf guy?
I thought so.
It was hard to tell some of the characters apart in this movie.
But they're getting like wailed on, and then he goes around the corner, and there's another guy who's kind of cowering, and Piper grabs him and is like, "Come on!" And they run from the cops to safety.
Yeah.
So the next morning, they like sleep overnight at this place, and they wake up the next morning, and people are trying to like pick up the pieces at the camp, and he goes to scope out the church, and he finds a whole box of the glasses. And I really love, this is the best part of the whole movie, I think, where he first puts the glasses on walking down the street in Los Angeles.
It is iconic for a movie that's like cult status. Like this iconography is unforgettable.
Yeah, I'm really glad that like horrible people haven't co-opted it the way they co-opted Red Pill in The Matrix of like waking yourself up to the reality, because that has been co-opted by the worst
apparently
people.
They tried, because in my head I was like, this feels like it could have been read the wrong way by wrong people, and apparently some people have, and John Carpenter shuts it down every time he sees it.
Yes, I have seen people trying to use it for like anti-Semitic. I just mean like the phrase like "put the sunglasses on" hasn't been like "take the red pill." Like is like that is a poison. You know what I mean? Like it's just like a poisoned phrase to me, and like it's a pretty interesting part of that movie. Although I think there's probably a very interesting transgender reading of The Matrix, knowing what we know now about the Wachowskis, that they both were. They both would ultimately transition.
Yeah.
I think there's probably a very interesting trans reading of that movie and the whole red pill, blue pill thing. I don't want to get into it now because I haven't seen the movie in 10 or more years and I do not feel qualified to make the thing, but I was just saying.
And I'm pretty sure I've only seen one of those 7 movies and TV shows and whatever they did.
Yeah. Yeah. But I'm just saying, I think there's an interesting reading of that first movie, I bet, that you could do now, although I'm not going to make it, but I would read it. If someone has it, you should tweet it to me.
Yeah.
But yeah, so he pops these glasses on and he like all the advertisements are for all these, tropical vacations and beer and gum and all whatever. And then he pops the glasses on and it's, consume, obey, marry, then
Reproduce.
Reproduce. I was going to say fornicate. And I'm like, no, that's not it. That's not what they want. Nope. And I really love the moment at the newsstand where he's like looking at the magazines.
Because I wrote that I love the newsstand. Because the newsstand set piece is great. That would be another great thing to put in our dissecting the 80s art
and
installation photo up.
Reveal of the first monster.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean that would be good, just like the store would, except I don't want to be involved in the labor process, so someone else has to make all the things.
All the magazines are white, glossy. It's a magazine. It's just white and glossy with one word on the cover in black that just says like obey or whatever. And it's cool because
and then as he flips,
it's different words.
Flips through, right? But it's like just single words, these bold white, black on white things. But yeah, I love that. Like the first alien strolls up, and Piper sort of pulls the glasses off, and then sees the guy and is staring at him, and the guy is like, "What are you looking at, chump?" And it's just like I love everything about it.
It's very 80s guy energy.
Yeah. And the artist Shep Ferry, who did that, is obviously probably most famous for that Obama poster, the Hope one. Mm-hmm. All of his art is very influenced by the consume and obey and stuff.
The typography.
Right. He might be the Obey Andre the Giant guy. I'm not 100% sure if that's him.
That sounds more on those lines. But there's what I also really loved is that the newsstand worker goes to Roddy and is like, "Hey, you gonna pay for that magazine? I don't want any trouble, but just like put it back if you're not gonna use it." And Roddy looks down at the guy's hand, and his dollar bills are just white scraps of paper that say, "This is your God." And I was like, "This is so scathing."
Yes, yeah.
Like the fact that a studio made this movie is insane, considering like it is a scathing review, like scathing look at consumer culture.
I mean, Parasite won an Academy Award for being about this last year, and it's like these movies are 32 years apart, and I just feel a lot of the criticism of this movie is people were not ready for the message of it. I still think that their valid criticisms of this movie is being like not great, because it's true, but the message of this movie is wonderful, and it was just 30 some odd years too early.
Yeah. And this is where he goes into the grocery store. And then I wrote, never mind, this is my new favorite.
Did you peep the High Times magazine snuck in the back row of this magazine rack in the grocery store?
No.
So the only reason it caught my eye is because all of them are like it's like there's a Sports Illustrated, a Newsweek, a Time, like big magazines. And then there was one in the back with like really funky letters. And I'm like, is that like a Mad magazine? Like what'd they stick back there? And I backed it up and I was like, oh, it's High Times. That probably jives with John Carpenter, I feel.
Yeah, that makes sense. I also like really love the design of the aliens. It's like ghoulish in a way, and it's purposely that way, I read, because Carpenter was like, the aliens are stripping away our humanity, so they look like stripped away humans.
Right.
Their eyeballs are the creepiest
super
part.
Super duper gnarly. Yeah. And a lot of the criticisms I saw were about the effects, which totally blew my mind. I think these are really cool makeups. I think they hold up really well in high definition.
Yeah.
There's a few of them where you can see some seams, But I was stunned to see that, like, of all the things to criticize in this movie, the effects are not where you should be aiming.
But yeah, the only thing that I didn't like about the design and execution of the makeup was that so it's designed in a way that where they don't have lips, they just have teeth. And so when the aliens start talking to each other, that looks a little wonky because it's clearly like a set of teeth over a human's lips.
Right. And you can hear it in some of the dialogue too.
Yeah.
But this is one of the parts where it's clearly Piper's just doing wrestling promos because he sees this old lady and she's an alien and there's a human woman on the other side of him. And he's like, these glasses reveal everything. You're good looking. This one over here, real fucking ugly. And then it becomes like a whole issue in the store.
Yeah, it was he's like normal formaldehyde face.
Yeah. Yes, formaldehyde face. It's just like, clearly this is just him rattling off wrestling one-liners.
And he straight up is like, these glasses make me see the world different. And I was like, oh no, what are you doing? You don't say that.
Yeah, you just gave away the whole thing, man. You just screwed it up.
Play it cool, bro.
Yeah. So my issue with the movie is how quickly he goes from like puts the glasses on, sees the world, and then starts shooting people.
Yes, I agree.
Like, so he leaves the people all start talking into their wristwatches, and they're like, "We have a
It's
male."
very eerie looking because all of a sudden, all the people, all the humans have disappeared from this grocery store. Because the first is just the woman in the fur coat being like, "I have one. I think he can see me," and then he looks around and there's no people in this grocery store. It's just aliens, and they're all talking into their wristwatch, slowly walking towards him. It's very unnerving.
Yeah. Yeah, it looks awesome. But he runs outside, he sees a woman and realizes she's an alien, and she starts doing the same thing, and he's like, that's like perfume on a pig. And then the cops show up, and the cops are also aliens. Yeah, well, the white people are under duress, so they just showed up. So this scene is like where it all goes off into crazy town for me. Is like he doesn't just like decide to join the revolution. He's like the leader of it somehow, because he beats up these cops. He takes their guns. He kills both of them. He goes into their
broad daylight.
Right. He goes into their squad car. He takes the shotgun. He takes one of their radio belts, and he walks into a bank and just starts shooting aliens.
Because no other character is like this at all.
No.
Like they put on the glasses and react very differently. They're like, I can't believe this. And he puts on the glasses and is like, oh, target practice.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So I think this movie would be better if there's a little more connective tissue there. But he goes into this bank, he gives the iconic bubblegum line, which is one of those lines that people famously quote incorrectly. Just like beam me up, Scotty, is never, because people always say I'm here to kick ass and chew gum, and I'm all out of gum, and it's like I think it's much more ridiculous the way he does it in a good way. It's chew bubble gum and kick ass,
and I'm all out of bubble gum.
The fact that it's specifically bubble gum is what delights me.
I agree.
He's not here for your double mint. He's not here for your
Freedent.
For your extra, your strawberry trident. No, it's bubblegum. Thank you. I'm just imagining him like one of the things he took off the cop was like a roll of bubble tape.
I was going to say bubble tape.
He like pops the can open and just puts the whole round of gum in his mouth like a psycho.
No, he pulls the roll out, takes a bite of it, puts it back in.
Yeah.
So this is where we learn that the aliens can watch teleport.
Yeah.
And then we see a little flying security drone, which I really wanted to see the real world equivalent of this thing.
Yeah, I think that was just too expensive of a shot.
But like, how cool would it have been if it was like, it's a pigeon?
No, I'm totally with you. A pigeon would have been a rad way to do it. There's a bunch of cool ways to do it, I think. The way he reacts to it, I think it was supposed to be a flying vehicle of some sort. But this is one of those things that's like, this movie just predicted, surveillance 30 years early.
Yes.
That's what people do with drones now. Well, first there's a non-alien cop, which I really like. This is an important moment for the character, I think, because he shows up and he points the gun at the guy and he's like, put the gun down. And the guy does because he's not an alien. And he's like, now get out of here. And the guy just runs away. And I think that's like establishing the moral code of like he's only here to kill the aliens is, I think, an important distinction he makes.
Well, and any of the scenes where he's shooting up a crowd of people, it is only aliens. And they are not like... Again, I'm not a gun guy by any stretch, but when I play video games with guns like Fallout, where there's a lot of different guns to pick from. He's not picking like sharpshooter specific guns, yet somehow he only kills aliens.
Right, he's just a very good shot somehow.
So he kidnaps a lady getaway driver.
Yeah, her name's Holly, and we find out that she works in TV. And I think she has a gay couple as a neighbors.
I was going to say, they're like gay stoners.
Okay. Because I was like, it's just like they're just regular people. It's not like obnoxious, which I was very afraid was going to be the
But also, they're barely in the movie. They're there for 30 seconds as they pull into the garage to say hi to Holly. And I was like, oh, we're going to get a new set of characters. And then they just take the Uber right out.
Right. Like, well, goodbye. Gonna go smoke a J.
And then Uber, we're responsible.
Don't drive high. So he tries to get her to put the glasses on for a while, and she just flat won't do it.
Well, because she thinks he's probably a rapist, definitely a kidnapper, maybe a murderer. Like the way he's like, how about we go to your place? Do you live alone? She's like, well, this is it.
Yeah, I feel like I would be putting the glasses on to just placate the person to try to like make my move.
I will say that's what I was thinking the whole time as he was, because every time he yells at the characters to do, I'm like, honestly, I'd be like, you stay over there, slide them across the gravel to me. Yeah. I will put them on for you.
Yeah.
You promise not to shoot me.
Right. And then you just be like, oh, whoa, just react big.
You're that guy at the party that's pretending he's high. He's like, this water tastes like broccoli, man. And you're like, what?
Did you just say this water tastes like broccoli?
Yes. And people are like,
what a terrible glass of water.
I know. That's what I mean. Like the guy who pretended to be high. And you're like, that's not how pot works.
Oh, you mean every movie screenwriter?
Yes.
Like, I see people smoke pot. Mostly they just lay on the couch. You watch people in a movie smoke pot, they're like, whoa, the whole world is a kaleidoscope now, and my cat is talking to me.
And I'm like, hey, I feel like you think LSD is weed.
Yeah.
You think acid is weed.
Been around a fair number of people who are stoned, and mostly they just wanted to dance or listen to music or just like lay down. So I don't know
most of the time it's let's lay down and have a nap.
Right.
Give me some snowballs. I'm gonna take a nap. So this woman has very creepy eyes. They're like Goldie Hawn in Death Becomes Her eyes. Like they are. Undead.
Yeah, they do have a weird vibe,
and I don't know why, because I don't think they're like supernatural. I don't think she's...
I think it's just that she has a very reflective eyeball, which I know sounds insane. But I was watching...
Very light-colored...
Iris?
Iris. I work at an eye surgery center. I should know this.
And the first two things I watched in 4K really freaked me out because there were scenes in the show... I think it was Killing Eve, where you can literally see the lighting grid in the actor's eye, like reflected in the pupil of the actor.
That's pretty trippy.
Oh, it was super freaky because I was like, what the hell? It's like, she's got like this grid oh my God, I can literally, it's the lighting rig. Like I'm just looking at the reflection of the lighting rig behind the camera. And that's why her eyes look so odd.
It's like how in every Instagram post, you can see the ring light in everyone's eyes.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Anyway, the two things about this woman that made me think she would be your favorite character in a movie, but apparently not, are one, she says she's thirsty and picks up a whole bottle of wine without a glass.
I did like that mood. That's a big mood.
And two, she literally just throws Piper out the window, like through the plate glass.
That's why I was like, oh, are the aliens able to disguise themselves?
Right. It was very bizarre that this glass just shatters like it does.
I also love the stupid video game logic of like the glasses hurt you if you wear them too long, which feels like the longer you keep your like, hey, there's batteries in your flashlight. You can't.
Yeah.
This game is pitch black, but you have to find batteries. Like, fuck off.
I do hate that kind of quest in a video game, but I do think this movie sets it up, like I said, with the TV signal headache thing. Like, interrupting the alien signal is difficult for your brain, I think is a good thing to have in the movie.
That's fair.
They do decide it's stupid in the third act and no longer have to deal with it, which is a little bit
because
of a bother.
The problem with that logic, though, is that it's not wearing them, it's taking them off that hurts.
Yeah, I guess. I think the way Piper says it in her room is basically like, oh man, wearing these is like coming down from a bad trip. Like taking these off is like coming down from a bad trip.
His water tastes like broccoli, man.
Broccoli. I feel like that's going to be a new catchphrase on the show.
A new t-shirt.
I think you've stumbled into one there.
It's just,
this water tastes like broccoli.
I'll get my artist friend to sketch up a glass of water with a piece of broccoli in it.
That would be the single most confusing entertainment-related t-shirt that has ever existed. Could you imagine, like,
but I only want
4 people who listen to this?
Like, so here's the thing. Would it be like, I'm thinking it's either like small, like fist size at your breast pocket, or it's giant on the whole shirt?
It's the whole shirt. It's huge. It says this water tastes like broccoli, and it's like a glass of water with a whole stalk of broccoli in it, like a whole bushy head with a long stalk.
Yeah.
And that's it. Just this water tastes like broccoli. But like imagine putting that shirt on out in the wild and someone recognizing it, and getting the joke. You'd never feel cooler. Like you'd have such a good connection.
That would be the coolest. It's like if someone, if I wore my Macho Man Drew shirt and someone was like,
right.
Hey,
yeah, exactly.
I listen to that podcast.
This water tastes like broccoli. There's an incredible stunt fall when he gets thrown out the window.
I don't understand. Like it's like you turned off gravity. Like you're in Gmod all of a sudden. She whips around and smashes a wine bottle into his head and sends him flying through a goddamn window.
Yes, and then he just like does hilarious crumple physics all the way down the hill.
Yeah, he's ragdoll.
Yes, exactly. It's just like flump, flump, flump. And he gets to the bottom and kind of like shakes the glass out of his hair and is like, well, I guess I better be on my way. And he runs to an alley and he sleeps in it.
A fluffy mullet.
It is, yeah. He's like a sort of like a Snake Plissken vibe, but worse. Like the Snake Plissken looks kind of cool.
Snake Plissken has
John Carpenter,
gorgeous hair.
Yes, I think John Carpenter just really likes this hairstyle.
I think so. And this is why I didn't like
at this point.
Holly, because I'm constantly confused by her character, and not in a fun way, like in a ooh, you know what I mean?
Right. It's like, is she a double agent the whole time?
I truly don't know.
No, I don't either. We'll get to that though. Piper sleeps in the alley, and he goes to Keith David for help at the construction site, and Keith David's like, get the hell out of here.
You murdered a lot of people in a bank.
Right. People are looking for you. I don't want to help you. And then Piper's like, all right, well, I got to go get that box of sunglasses that I stashed in a trash can that we forgot to mention. And he goes looking for it, and it's gone, but there's a garbage truck there. So he sneaks into the garbage truck and gets the glasses back.
It's a weird-looking future garbage truck.
Yeah, it's an odd design. It's bizarre. Like, for some reason, the ramp goes up while he's in it, and he thinks something bad is about to happen, but then it just drives away.
That's what, he was like, oh no. And I'm like, it's not the trash compactor in Star Wars.
Right. You're just going to slide down this little ramp. But anyway, he gets the box of glasses back, and Keith David shows up, and he's holding the box in his left hand. And I didn't notice this in other times I watched it, but Keith David is like 10, 15 feet away, would you say?
Gets the money right in the box.
Yes, he throws it perfectly into the box. You hear it thunk in there so satisfyingly.
It's like somewhere between an underhand and a like
Frisbee.
Take your money toss.
Yeah. But yeah, he tosses it right in the box. He's like, this is the best I can do for you. It's a week's pay. That's it. I'm out. And then Piper is like, no, you got to put these glasses on. And this leads to a fight that a lot of people really love. I'm curious to hear your thoughts.
So it is very well executed. Like, it's two men who know what they're doing. They've clearly trained and rehearsed this fight. It is beautifully executed. My problem is that it's like the most boring version of a fight for 6 minutes.
Right. I think it's way too long. People put this on their like favorite fight scenes of all time, and I'm genuinely kind of baffled by it.
And I think from a technical standpoint, yeah, like it's a 6-minute fight sequence that looks really good and looks realistic and it feels real. But I'm just like, I'm also watching a movie about space aliens and Reaganomics. Like,
right.
Let's get some perspective here.
Yeah. Piper does a couple of wrestling moves in it, which I appreciate.
Well, he clotheslined a cop earlier.
Yes, he did. He did absolutely clothesline a cop. Technically, that was a lariat.
What the fuck is a lariat?
You run into a clothesline, and a lariat runs into you.
Oh, I didn't realize there was a difference.
There's a nuance to arm strikes.
Apparently, this fight was only supposed to be 23 seconds, but they just kept going, and John Carpenter liked it so much he left it all in.
That's genuinely stunning to me and also makes a lot of sense based on
I can see it being like, hey, we got 23 seconds, but if you guys want to improv for a few minutes, we'll kind of like get a couple angles, like whatever. And they just went for it, dude.
Yeah, it seems like he told him to just like roll around a bit and he'd shoot it from
like 5 angles. At one point, they're straight up pumping.
Together. No, they absolutely are. They're like trying to get leverage on each other.
Like one's like it's one guy on his back, another guy on top of him, just wiggle worming.
Yeah. Anyway, Piper finally gets Keith David to put the glasses on.
Forces the glasses on his face.
Yes. But he finally sees everything. But I do like that the shot immediately after this is they go to this like flop house motel, and they both look like they had the absolute shit kicked out of them. Like the black eye and cut lip and that kind of stuff. All that makeup is really well done. So they drink like a 12-pack of beers in this
they're just like living here. I don't know how much time is supposed to have passed.
I got the impression it was one night.
Oh, okay. So the next day, the other guy just happened to be in their lobby
or whatever. Yeah, that's the part that like that's another like this movie takes a few shortcuts. The huge one is Piper like seeing the aliens and starting killing them, and the second one is this guy like knowing where they are and then recruiting them and telling them where to go. It also doesn't explain how the woman is able to find them either.
Yeah, I don't get it. Because this guy's like, "Hey, here's our our meeting location. You should come."
Yeah. So they go. There's like a huge room of people there. They're all on the team, and the woman who gave him the peas, I'm pretty sure it's the same woman who gave him the peas.
I think so.
Is like,
I needed like scarves or funny hats or like some way to identify all these characters because they're all dressed kind of the same.
Yeah, I mean, I think part of that is on purpose. It's supposed to be like the faceless people like rising up against the tyranny of this.
Yeah, but when there's a twist later, I would like to immediately understand who I'm looking at because now he's dressed differently.
Right. Yeah. Okay. That's fine. I mean, I will say that I'm not sure that I knew that the guy was the same guy from camp when they see him at the tuxedo the first time I watched this movie.
Yeah. Okay.
And I think it confused the hell out of me. So I'm with you.
Or like more names. Like this movie would do great if a few more times we were like, "Hi, Frank. Hi, Lisa."
Yeah. But anyway, here's where they decide like, oh, we can't have our actors wearing sunglasses for the whole movie. So these are magic contact lenses that you put in. And also they don't hurt you anymore. So you don't have to worry about that part, which seems like a real nice shortcut.
Yeah. Well, also like they didn't think about like explain like what are the ramifications of living your life looking at a black and white world from now on? Like, what is that like?
Or like, yeah, like, do you take them off and to like only wear them sometimes? It all seems like kind of nuts. But they get this watch that was stolen from one of the aliens, and they realize that like it's like a transporter. They're having this plan session. Holly arrives, and Piper like goes to talk to her, and she tells them that the station is clear and not part of where the signal is coming from. And they're having this like tender moment. They just start to have the like, "Oh, I love you" moment, which pisses us off in all of these movies, and then literally there's an explosion and a tank or a squad of policemen run through the door.
Insane and not what I was expecting.
Right.
This is why, again, Holly's very confusing, because earlier she's like, it seems like she understands what Roddy is trying to get her to do and like pushes him out the window and then calls the police and picks up the sunglasses. And then now she's at this meeting, but still being weird and cagey.
Right. And based on what happens after this, it's like, well, is she like working for the aliens and she helped them lead them to this meeting site? And then that's why it got raided.
That would be so much more interesting if it was clear.
Right. And that's my other big quibble is, so like there's a huge gunfight. There's all this shooting that happens. Keith David and Roddy Piper get kind of stuck. They do something to the watch and make it work. And they're like, you have a portal for 10 seconds. And then they jump through it.
I did like that hole because it's literally a hole in the like concrete asphalt.
Yes, that leads directly to the like Disney utilidors. It looks like there's these like
I was gonna say it's utilidors, but then later it just feels like a Tomorrowland attraction when they're like stepping on a teleport space pad.
Yeah. Have you been in the utilidor?
Yes, all the time.
Okay, is this what they look like? Are they just like big nondescript tunnels?
Well, so the problem, they can't be that because you will get lost. So there's a lot of like each land has a different color, like different color assigned to it. So you like follow the like stripes on the wall, and you're like, oh, I need to go to Frontierland. I'm gonna follow the green stripe or whatever. Also, you know where you are sometimes because of the garbage smell. Yeah, I got my hair cut down there a lot.
Oh, interesting. Well, they find a guard station, and the guards are like listening to the radio about the raid that just happened. They're super pumped, and they end up in this banquet for the aliens and their rich, I guess not donors, but like the people who have sold out to them.
I thought this would have been more impactful if there were no aliens at the tables.
Agreed.
If it was just like aliens on the stage. Speaking. And like, we are the the whatever, but all of you are humans who chose to rat out humanity.
Right. No, I agree with you. I think there should be all humans in the audience. But this is where the guy from camp who was watching TV earlier.
Is that him? Is that who it's supposed to be?
He was one of the headache people. Yeah, he's the guy in the beginning who has the headache, and then he like tells the guy to screw off.
Okay, because again, I couldn't tell. I was like, now he's all cleaned up in a tuxedo, and I can't recognize his character.
Right. So this actor is the guy who also played a bum in Back to the Future. He like there's two scenes in Back to the Future where a bum, I don't know, he's a bum in Back to the Future. That's probably not the term you would
drifter
use now.
is what Wikipedia says.
But he is like in Back to the Future. He's like looking through a trash can as the DeLorean pops in, and then they make the same joke in the sequel.
I was gonna say it's Back to the Future 2, right? Where they knock out both. They knock out Leah Thompson and hide her in the trash.
But he's in both of them. He's like lying on a bench, I think.
Oh.
But he is that's the actor. His name is George. It's three. What is it? George
Pembley the Third.
George Buck Flower, who also he like I looked this guy up and he acted in like some softcore pornography. Like Cinemax type stuff. Yeah, like not. I don't think he was doing the sexy parts. I think he was just like in the movies. But he also like wrote.
He played the plot.
He has a co-writing credit on a movie wherein a woman tries to seduce her famous estranged novelist father, and I was just like, all of this is weird, bud.
That's so porn.
But anyway, he plays this he's now rich and with these rich people because he sold out to the aliens. And I think this like end plot stuff is much more interesting if the good guys didn't like literally fall through a hole into the solution to their problems. And instead it was like, okay,
I do like it because it was an accident. Like Dr. Facilier?
Keith
David. I was like, Keith Richard, that's not right. Because Keith David is playing with the watch, trying to make it work, and he gets frustrated and just throws it on the ground, and it cracks. And then the watch says, your device is broken. We've created a portal that will last for 10 seconds to get you back to base, and after that, the watch will explode.
All that I'm fine with. My bigger thing is like, so this guy, this I think his name is George in the movie, but the homeless guy who before had been like yelling about the preacher on TV and stuff. He gives them this tour, and he's like very knowledgeable about the alien space, which he has been
everything about it.
But like maybe a week he's been there.
Yeah, right.
But isn't this much more interesting if this guy is a plant and he's like helping them get inside to this place, and he is like infiltrated the bad guys, and this is like all part of the master plan? I feel like that's much more interesting.
That is interesting, but also I do like that one of their own sold them out. Because he's like genuinely like, oh, you guys sold out too. Great, I'm not alone.
Yeah. But this guy, like, this is another one of the shortcuts of the movie. This guy has been like I said, like a week, maybe 2, that he's been an alien sellout, and he knows every single thing about all of their shit.
He's been through the utilidors.
Yeah, he's like walking around. So they. He does, however, play a really good sniveling bootlicker, because they get to the part where they're like overlooking the newscasters, and he's like, Piper's like, I've never been inside a TV studio. Can I see what that looks like? And the guy tries to like sweet talk the guard, and the guard's like, no, of course not. No. And then they shoot the guards, and this guy is like, guys, and this is apparently a line directly from Universal, or one of the executives who put the movie out, who was like, we all sell out every day. Like, why not make a little money at it? And Carpenter was like furiously taking notes during the meeting, I'm guessing.
He's like, Deborah, are you writing this down?
Yeah. So they take this guy out as well, and they roll into the studio, shoot it all up, and then they start like walking through the newsroom, the news offices, also with these huge guns that no one seems alarmed at all by.
Well, they're alarmed, but everyone's just kind of like no one's doing anything or running. They're just kind of frozen.
Right. So at this point, the aliens are trying to track them down, and they're trying to get to the radio tower, the broadcast tower of the thing. Did you notice the special piece of equipment that the alien?
Yeah, is it Star Trek or Ghostbusters?
It's the Ghostbusters PKE meter.
Okay, I was like, it's one of those, because it looks like a block on a handle with 2 little wings that pop out. They sell it at Spirit Halloween.
Yeah, I'm sure they do. So they run through a bunch of aliens, and they see Holly, and they're like excited about this. And then like 45 seconds later, she turns on Piper and pulls a gun on him. And I just was like, what is this? Is this woman a sellout to the aliens? Like, what
she
is
kills
the situation?
Frank.
Yeah, she does shoot Frank. That's right.
And I was like, wait a minute. I'm so confused.
Right. Like Piper kidnapped this woman, seemed to really like her. She showed up at the meeting, so he thought she was like on the squad, but that's clearly not true. They pull guns on each other. He's like, screw this. He shoots Holly and destroys the dish behind her in basically one burst of gunfire.
He has a pea shooter.
Yes.
And manages to kill Holly and blow up the dish and then get killed.
Yeah, he gets shot by a helicopter, an alien with a gun in a helicopter. But him blowing up the dish like wakes everyone up. Basically, they stop being able to get interference, and people are like coming awake to this, and it leads to the absurdest of absurd endings, which is a topless woman thrusting on top of a man laying in bed, and she looks down, and he is an alien who is like, this is the first time we see the alien body, which is not as good of a makeup as it's not as good as a makeup as the face. I feel
it's just colors and shading.
Yeah, and he's like, "What's wrong, babe?" And it's smash credits start rolling. It's so weird.
So the crazy thing is that the scene I remember from this movie was the girl having sex and looking down, and the guy is an alien. I did not remember it was the smash cut to credits moment. I thought it was, in my brain, it was part of a larger montage.
Right. Yeah, there is a montage, but just that's the last shot of it.
Yeah. This movie, actually, this is one of the few instances of a movie where I'm like, I wouldn't mind a sequel to this to see what happens now.
Right.
What
and
do the humans do
for it because he's dead? So
you super don't.
Yeah.
But is it going to be a Ghostbusters 2 situation where an alien mayor is like, we can forget that never happened, or what?
Yeah. We just everyone pretends that it never happened at all. Yeah, it's fascinating to me. Like the ending is so abrupt, and it's like on one hand I'm like I kind of like it, like it's very similar to Halloween
because this movie is 95 minutes.
Right. Like one of the very few times you will ever hear this said on this podcast, but like, I don't know, another 10 wouldn't have killed me.
I agree.
Like,
make it an hour 45 and I'm fine.
Yeah. Like I don't like, we're not going crazy here, but like a few more scenes probably would have helped. And like, I don't know, maybe like it's 95 minutes with a probably 4-minute end credit sequence. The opening where he's just walking through the town is like 4 or 5 minutes. Yeah.
And then a 6-minute punching.
Right. So you're talking about like 80 minutes a movie. But yeah, it's like of like, you know, other than those 3 pieces. But yeah, the montage is really cool, and you're exactly right. It makes you want more. You're like, oh my God, now what happens? Like, do people wake up? And I guess his message is like, I hope so. Right. You know,
well, my other question about it is that, so someone in the movie says, they colorify us.
Right.
Which means that the world is in black and white.
Yeah.
So like the implication I took was that the world itself is in black and white, which means all of this, like how crazy would the montage have been if everything was in black and white all of a sudden and the people are like, what is happening?
Yeah, that would have been interesting. I thought it was sort of like a metaphorical, they color the world.
Okay. Like maybe just because they're sunglasses, that's why it's black and white.
Right. But yeah, I mean, it's a good question. I don't know. The other thing I was thinking is like, I mean, I'm sure it's because it was the 80s and it was like, we just need some breasts in this movie. But I feel like that last scene is way yuckier if she's kissing him and not having sex with him.
You think?
The mouths on these aliens are so yucky. And their eyeballs are just like touching. Like his eyeball goop would be on her cheek.
The eyeballs look like I'm trying to describe it. It's sort of like at a if you go to like a spring fair or some like cheapo fair and you spend like five tickets on a bouncy ball that's cut like a gem, like it's faceted, like a faceted ball.
Yeah. It's sort of like a geodesic sort of.
Yeah, it's
design.
Thank you.
Geodesic dome, like lots of triangles making up an orb shape. But yeah, I mean, I love the makeup in this. I think it's really cool. But yeah, so that's the end of the movie anyway. And I actually, while I was watching this, I think this is one of those facts that like I have known and then not known 52 times in my life. But yeah, Carpenter won an Academy Award for an early short film he made. Oh. But before that, when he was a student, he made this student film called Captain. Damn it. Anyway, he made this student film about a guy who's like a peeping Tom. And I was curious about it. It turns out they like recently, within the past 10 years, found it and put it out. And it's amazing how much this early movie of his is like the prototype for Halloween.
That's kind of cool. I would love to watch that.
It's about a peeping. It's like very, very rough, but it's called Captain Voyeur, and it's a guy. It's a black and white.
It's what, like 10 minutes?
7-8 minutes long. It's like 8 maybe.
Okay.
But it's a guy with a mask who's like creepily sneaking in, looking through people's windows. But yeah, maybe this made me fall down a little John Carpenter rabbit hole. I went and added like all his other movies that are also streaming on Stars right now.
He did The Fog, right?
Stuff. Yeah, I don't love that as much as a lot of people do, but it could be a future episode for sure.
It's been on my list.
What are your final day live thoughts?
I like it. It's a very good movie. It's very topical. We're still living in that, consumer world, and the police brutality is, it's there. But it's a well-constructed movie. The cast is great. The concept is great. The production design is amazing. Like, I would love, again, when we have the Dissecting the 80s photo, like art installation photo experience, there's going to be a They Live spot.
Yeah, I really dig this movie a lot. I don't think it's as good as a movie as like Halloween, which I think is almost perfect. But I think it's got a lot of really cool stuff in it. I think it's fascinating that he made this movie with a wrestler for no reason, apparently. But like you said, it's hard to imagine anybody else playing the character given what it is.
If you put like a Rick Moranis in there, the movie's super different. You put a
yeah, it's not a Rick Moranis movie. That's the wrong direction.
yeah, because I'm like Belushi, Aykroyd. I'm like, who else?
No, it's not funny. That's the thing. Is like it's not. Yeah, I don't know.
You
who
get
the answer would
Loomis.
be. It would be like a character actor that you'd want there.
Yeah, but most character actors are funny.
I don't know that I agree with that. I mean, I think of character actors of all stripes. Dick Miller's not funny.
I think Dick Miller's pretty funny.
Anyway, I mean, I agree with you. I think it's a really rad movie. I definitely recommend this one. If you've never seen it before, we probably ruined it for you by talking about it in such detail, but it's a really fun, interesting movie. It's got a lot to say. I don't know that it's the best messenger for this message, but it does have an important thing to say, I think, and it wraps it up in all sorts of weird fights and alien creatures and such.
I am a little surprised it hasn't been remade.
Apparently, they tried to.
It feels like it.
Yeah, they tried to a couple times, and the one time that it got closest, they were like, "Oh, we're actually not going to do any of that social message stuff. We're just going to readapt this story, like the original story, which I've never read and maybe doesn't."
I think I have read it.
Okay.
It's called 8 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
I think I have read it before. Because it's similar.
Okay.
I want to say it's similar to... Is it The Adjustment Bureau? That weird, random, shitty movie with Emily Blunt where like...
I know that movie, but I don't know anything about it.
Yeah, I want to say it's something like that because I feel like I read it maybe in school or just for fun. But yeah, it's a short story.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a short story, and then there's a comic book adaptation or something similar, and he used both of those things to put it together. It also was
adapted into an Are You Afraid of the Dark episode.
Is that right?
Yeah, it's called The Tale of the Specks.
Okay.
And it's where a girl gets these X-ray specs that let her, when she puts them on. It's not that people turn into other things. It's that she can see these like it's people in black morph suits, which is admittedly kind of creepy. And so she sees this world of like random people,
like shadow monsters.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna have to look that up later, but I definitely recommend this. You should seek this out if you haven't seen it yet. It's a really cool movie. It kind of gets lumped in as a horror movie, which I don't think is accurate at all. Like, it's not at all frightening.
I mean, thrilling.
Yeah, it's like, I think this is more like an action movie with aliens in it than it is, you know what I mean? Like, it's more like a Predator, which is not to me a horror movie. It's like an action movie with a creature in it.
I would call Predator horror before I'd call this horror.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, definitely worth your time. It's a really interesting movie. It's sort of a fascinating piece. John Carpenter's career is really, really fascinating to me. Like, his sort of bouncing around to just like different stuff that interested him is fascinating to me, that he was able to do that for as long as he was. Mm-hmm. Not always gonna have hits and success that way, but interesting stuff usually comes from it. But yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely worth it. I like this movie a lot. I was happy that we got to watch it. So thanks, Tom. Appreciate that. Looking forward to doing more favorites in February.
Yeah, so far I'm glad you all listened to me when I said listener request month. I want good short movies.
Yeah. I mean, I think Grease 2 is a really good episode. So I didn't love that movie, but I think it's a good episode. So we'll see what happens with Deadly Friend.
I wasn't miserable watching Grease 2.
No,
it wasn't Garbage Pail Kids where I was like
to do Garbage Pail Kids.
I was like, would this movie be better if I watched it in 18 10-part increments?
I think I did it in 5 parts, which is unheard of for me for one of these movies. Anyway, thank you so much for listening to the show. Don't forget to check us out on Twitter at Dissect the 80s. On Facebook, it's Dissecting the 80s. DissectingThe80s.com. That's all the stuff you need to know about the show. And we'd love to hear from you. You can tweet us or Facebook message us or email us at dissectingthe80s@gmail.com. If you've got a great story about a movie we've done on the show or a topic we talked about, if you think this water tastes like broccoli and you want to let us know,
this water tastes like broccoli, man.
If somebody wants to design a This Water Tastes Like Broccoli t-shirt, contact us. Let's figure out something for that.
Maybe a sticker. Sticker feels cheaper.
Definitely would love to figure that out for sure. Anyway, thank you so much for listening to the show. We really appreciate it. Our next episode, as you know, will be about Deadly Friend, as we just said, and that episode drops the final Monday in June.
Isn't there another one? Are we doing Adventures in Babysitting too?
Well, I was just getting to that. Final Monday in June will be Deadly Friend on the main feed, and then over on the Patreon, dropping round about the 15th, which is this episode got out on the 15th, so soon this week, I'm going to say probably sometime between now and the 22nd that we haven't figured out yet, just because we haven't recorded that episode and we got to figure out the timing, will be our Adventures in Babysitting episode, which is another
one of my favorites.
Yes, and that one is streaming on HBO at the moment, if you want to check that one out first. So.
An emblem for it is on Disney Plus, because they like to put 3 years out.
Not till 2021.
F off.
Yes, it's very stupid. Thank you so much for listening to the show. I have been Tripp Leno.
I will always be Andrew Leno.
Until next time.
This water tastes like broccoli, dude.
Dissecting the 80s is a Chum Some of This production.